All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Product School webinar. I'm Nikki, and thank you so much for joining us today. So just before we get started, in case you didn't know, Product School offers product management certificates online and at our 20 campuses worldwide. On top of that, every week we offer some amazing local events that you can check out. And we also host several online webinars, live streams, and Ask Me Anything sessions. So head on over to productschool.com after this webinar to check them out. So today we have a great guest presenting with us. We have Mark Stanton from VMware. Thanks so much, Mark, for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Great. So Mark is a seasoned product manager with over 10 years of experience in the field. Currently, he's the director of product at VMware, where he is responsible for internal and partner-facing tools that his team develops. Mark has been with VMware for over a decade, starting as a professional service manager, ASEAN in Singapore. Later, he moved across to run solutions and programs within the company's professional services for the Asia-Pacific region. This includes such programs as building out a virtualization factories from scratch for APAC and developing tools to support professional service consultants globally. Later on, Mark successfully moved into a senior product managing position prior to becoming the director of PM at VMware. So, feel free to leave any questions you have for Mark in the comments, and towards the end, we'll address them all. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mark again. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Nikki. That is a bit of a background. I didn't realize I've been here at the company more than 10 years. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
So thank you for the invitation to speak today, and for those that have joined. It's exciting to be in the area of product management, which is really a fairly new role within the industry. And as you'll see kind of as I go through this presentation, it's actually also a pretty exciting place to be in at the moment as far as managing products, especially in the IT industry as well. So let me just go share my screen. So for those of you who don't know VMware, we're a very large company. I think about 26,000 employees. We're $10 billion in revenue a year. In fact, depending on which website you go to, we're either the 5th or the 6th largest software company in the world. So I manage a team of product managers in that company that looked after the majority of in fact, all of our products are associated with applications that either run on the customer's site or in the cloud. So it's a very software-driven, application-centric kind of products that we're launching. So that's just a little bit of the background. With that said, what I wanted to start with is the role of a product manager. And I'm sure many of you know this already, but it is really focused around if you like, the wood behind the arrow of a product. A product manager is extremely strategic in what they're doing as far as the development of their products. They're involved intimately in things like the market launch, the enablement, support, and really around the product vision and identifying new opportunities for their product. Now that's a lot to do in one role. And if you think about that inside any organization, you're covering a lot of different internal groups within any particular organization. Everything from support to marketing to enablement to the business unit. There's a lot of different touch points, if you like, inside an organization when you're a product manager. And if I was to look at when I hire product managers, who I'm actually looking for, what skills do I look at when I'm hiring product managers? And I would say the majority of the time that the skill set that I have within my product management team really comes from one of these 4 areas. They either come from a marketing background, a technical background, and that could be from development, from support in that technical area. They're either a superstar in project management, or they've come from the business themselves. So they've either been responsible for selling a product or managing it, or being a product owner of that organization. So that's really the skill set that gets drawn from. And if I think about the gap or the transition from any one of these roles to a product manager, I would say that probably the technical role is probably the hardest to transition into a product manager, because, and I've got folks on my team that have come from a development background. That transition, I think, is probably the hardest, because they constantly want to go back and get involved in the development of the product and focus in that area rather than potentially at the strategic nature or new business initiatives to do with their particular product. So that's just what I've seen. Now, I would say though that of my team, I've got people from all of these areas currently working within my team. I've got a super project manager that if I need to get a Gantt chart out for a product release, they can pull that together in minutes, those kind of things. So it's important that you have particular skills in all of this area. But if I think about what product manager is, it's actually all of these skills. And this is really what I'm looking for when I'm hiring a product manager. Sure, they're focused on a particular area sometimes, but a product manager is often a combination of all of those different skill sets all combined into one role that then becomes the role that I'm looking for to hire. So that's kind of what I would say. Now, that said, with a product manager, there are different types of product managers that I have. Apologies for the dog in the background. I've got often product managers that are much more focused on a technical background. So they're involved more with the development of the products, working very closely with the development team. And that's often their focus within their product, because maybe the product is a super technical product and they're much more focused on the development or the technology behind that product. I've also got product managers that are much more focused on the business. So they're more interested in, the go-to-market for that particular product. They're more aligned on the margin or the cost of the product, those kind of areas within product management. So that's kind of the different hats potentially that a product manager needs to wear inside their organization, because they're focused on different areas and different, potentially different focus areas for different products. But as I said previously, the product manager normally has a well-rounded of all of those different areas within the skill set that we talk about. So let me move on to some of the other things that I kind of look for within product managers, or skills or knowledge that a product manager would be, and I guess tips to things that you may need to pick up on or understand. There's some general ones, and if we're talking about software development, there's some very specific software development ones. But generally, to be able to converse and be able to discuss a product roadmap or even develop a product roadmap, understand user personas is super. That was really my introduction to product management, was understanding how user personas work and the different personas that would be using the product. And there's some really good stories and education around how personas work. Product requirements documents, and that's really what a PRD and PRQ is leaning towards as well. Product requirements questionnaire, the UI and the UX, just to understand the difference between those two, the user interface and the user experience, two very different things. And sometimes within my development team, I've got two skills within both of those areas within my development as well. Product requirements document, the PRD. Also, just understanding the difference between what is a product manager and a product owner. They are two different roles. Sometimes in smaller organizations, the product manager performs both those roles. But just understanding what the difference between those two, and really a product owner is much more focused on, if you like, the software development side of it, or the agile side of the product development. And terminology such as MVP, or minimal viable product. This is something that, as product managers, we often throw these terms around without even thinking about if people really understand what they mean. We will sit in a product brainstorming session and work on the roadmap strategy for a product and the release of that product. And MVP is an important one, because we say, okay, what do we need minimally in the product to get to launch? And everything else we kind of push out to a future release or a different sprint, those kind of things. So MVP is something that you need to understand and get across. If I then switch to software development, and that's predominantly what my products are, the applications, and I'm not going to explain all of these, but an agile kind of delivered software development team involves scrums, or maybe you do a waterfall approach. There's Kanban boards. Maybe you do time box development, and wireframes is in fact, we use wireframes a huge amount in our development. And just to understand what they are and how effective a wireframe is, most of the time we won't do one code of development, one line of development, unless we've done a wireframe that we've then socialized with our stakeholders to get approval on, that this is what they want built inside the tool. And only after we get that agreement and that buy-in will we actually start development. So wireframes and mock-ups, low fidelity, high fidelity, whatever you want to use, they're a key part to product managers and how you can very, very quickly move and do product development, because you're not wasting time on something that the field or your stakeholders haven't agreed to prior to actually starting the work. So that's terminology and artifacts. And I'm sure there's probably some questions around that as we move into the Q&A. But the last thing that I wanted to kind of go through is probably what a lot of you join the call for, is what's the tips and tricks for getting hired as a product manager. The first one I've talked a lot about already is really learning the lingo. There's lots of terminology to get across, PRQs, PRDs, MVP, UI, UX, all of those kind of terms. A lot of that is, if you go Google product managers and have a look at some of the free resources out there from the likes of Product School and others, there's some really great resources out there that you can delve into. Some of the other resources I'll talk about in a minute. One of the biggest things about I notice, and people that I generally kind of hire, is the passion that they show for a product. And I can't say this enough about product managers. Because you've got so much on your plate as a product manager when you're dealing with the support of a product and the roadmap of a product, and how working with the business on the strategy around that particular product. And that often takes from sun up to sundown, and even then some hours, especially when you've got a worldwide development team. Being passionate about your product makes such a difference, and makes that work seem so less tedious and so meaningless if you're passionate about it. So this is probably my biggest tip for you, is if you're after a product management job, and in one particular product, if you can be so passionate about that product and about the development of it, around how you could improve that product, then that is a huge step up the ladder to getting the job, or the step in the right direction. And that's my tip to you as well, is if you're interested in a product management position, be passionate about what the product is that you're working on. And that's where I would start looking. If you're passionate about a particular thing, even if it's not in the industry that you work for. A couple of the people that work for me were in a completely different industry, but they were passionate about a particular product in our group. So they advanced in their organization in a product management role, and then made the transition across to VMware. So that's kind of two tips in one there. Is often it's easier to get a product management role in an organization later on, once you've done it in an organization where you're currently working. And that's really, I think, jumping down to the fourth point there about extending your reach. One of my product managers, what they did was and this is a different product, different company they were working for, they saw some gaps in a product. They were on the support desk for one of their products. They saw some gaps in one of the products that they were supporting. They wrote up a brief and even, I would call it, a business plan for how they could improve that product. That eventually found its way into the hands of the product management team. And that person got promoted and kind of grabbed and pulled into the product management team, because they were so passionate about the product that they were supporting. So that's a really excellent way, if you like, to show passion for what you're working on by really showing interest, showing passion, um, writing up a business plan or an improvement or a roadmap, identifying areas in a particular product that you see deficiencies in that you could potentially improve, I think is a great way to kind of wade into the waters of being a product manager. That's really what we do. Complement your knowledge areas. So as we kind of talked about already, you know, a product manager is technical, marketing, enablement, is often project management. If you're not strong in some of those areas, then I would suggest that, you know, maybe you spend some time investing in some courses or some enablement around those areas. There's lots of different things you can study online, a lot of them for free, even from product school and from other organizations where you can start to kind of delve into some of those areas. There's some great resources from organizations such as Pragmatic Marketing on personas and user roles, those kind of things. If you're looking for certification, that's a great way, and that's kind of the point further down. Product School has a number of different certified courses. But what's interesting about a product manager role is there's no official certification you have to be a product manager. I'm sure there's some great certifications out there, and I'd encourage you to go and do some of those. But there's really no, you know, you don't have to have an MBA or a official certification to become a product manager. Almost all the product managers that work for me and that I know have got into the role through another avenue inside their organization. Some on purpose, some have just fallen into it. But yeah, certainly certifications around product management. There is quite a few out there and lots that you can go and do and see. But yeah, if you can do a lot of online research and enablement on the web, there's so much out there around product management and books that you can read as well. I'm happy to drop into the chat later on some of those books that are excellent at getting to know a product management role a little bit better. The second last point there is just around getting out there. There's lots and lots of events that you can attend. Product School will hold many events, which I've been to quite a few of those in different cities all over the US and in fact all over the world, around product managers all coming together and speaking and getting to go know each other. It's a great way to network, to get to know other product managers. There's a heap of different activities that go on. Without going through all of them, I've got a number of them that you know, Product Tank, Product Camp, Mind the Product. There's a whole lot of different of those kind of gatherings of product managers that come together, really just to talk about. And often some of these are breakfasts that I've been to where we sit in a restaurant and just write up on post-it notes and put them up and do our own little Kanban board on the side of the restaurant wall of product ideas and topics we want to talk about in regards to product management. So yeah, get out there, get to know people in the industry, find out things that you can do and areas that you can focus on, those kind of things. So it's a great way to socialize, to network. And even if some of those people aren't recruiting, often they know of other people inside other organizations that are looking for product managers. And Nikki, really my last point here is really around the passion of being a product manager. And I've touched on this already, but the product managers that I hire, they're all passionate about what they do. I'm not going to say they're in love with their product, but it's almost like it's their second child or third child. They enjoy what they do, and as do I do about my products. But you can see it in their eyes, and when you talk to them, and they're knowledgeable, they're passionate about their product. They want their product to succeed almost at any cost. So they'll take feedback from anybody, good and bad. They'll write up user stories around how to improve it. They'll work with the development team on getting those things done. They're relentless in their search for feedback on the products that they own and they love. So being passionate about it is probably the number one thing I look for when looking for product managers. And the last thing I'll say there is just on relentless execution. And this is what I encourage my team, and even my management encourages me to do as well, is, you know, once you're passionate about your product, it's about then executing relentlessly on improving that product. There's so much that we can do, and my roadmap for my products, I can't tell you how long my backlog is for some of the improvements on our products. Some of the things we may never get to, but the execution and how we can continually and transformatively change our products, every quarter, releasing new updates to our products. We have on some of our products 2 or 3 times a week, we will release updates on some of our products. And all of those updates require considerable enablement, marketing, product releases, all those kind of things. But that relentless execution to make sure that your product is the best that it can possibly be, that you're gathering feedback from your stakeholders, and you're thinking outside the box a lot of the time on how your product can be the best that it can be. That's really what I'm talking about when I say relentless execution. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to touch on, Nikki. So if there's, I'll open it up now and hand it back to you.
All right, thanks, Mark, for that awesome, informative presentation. Yeah, we do actually have a couple of questions from Facebook, so I'm going to go ahead and throw them at you. The first one is from Saif, and he's asking for some advice. He said that he recently graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Computer, Bachelor's degree in Computer Science, and he wants to know if you would advise to either aim for an APM role, an Associate Product Manager role in tech companies, so that he has his foot in the door, or should he continue working as a software developer and then later on transition into a product management role? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I think I touched on that a little bit. If he's currently, Saif is currently a developer, and I'm not sure if that's the company he wants to stay in or if he wants to move to another company. My recommendation is stay in the company where you are and continue to do the development that you're doing. But at the same time, start to wade into the waters of a product manager. So if you're if you know that there's gaps in the product that you're working on, but all you're doing is working on a particular area of the product, maybe you want to put together an improvement plan for that product, and then see if you can float that up the tree to the product management team and say, hey, look, I know I'm only working in this particular area, but I can see that if we were to do this to the product and these 5 things, that we could improve the product dramatically. And even if you wanted to take it to the next step and say, I think there's an additional X number of dollars of revenue involved if we were to do this particular thing, then all of a sudden there's you're thinking like a product manager then. And I think I've talked a little bit about that, is if you can become a product manager for the product that you're working on right now first, then once you're a product manager, it's much easier then to transition into another company that maybe you're more passionate about a particular product on. So that's my advice, and depending on your tenure at that company, stay where you are, continue to develop, but make yourself known inside that organization as being someone that's thinking forward-looking about the product. That would be my advice. Yeah. Good question.
Okay, great, thank you. That was a great answer. So I have another question that is actually one of the questions that we like to ask all of our speakers, and this person wants to know, how does a PM start his first day in a new company? Or what would you say for the first month, 30 days, something like that? What would you do as a product manager?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So within VMware, the first 30 days within our company, we have an onboarding program that is you spend the first few weeks not even in your role as a whole. You join other folks from the organization that are in different roles just to get to know the organization. But if I kind of fast forward through that, we call it start enablement. But once you fast forward through that company enablement, then what I'd like to do is make sure that you're using the same terminology that the rest of our team are talking to as well, the same speak. So I'm thinking things like pragmatic marketing, if you're talking about user roles and personas and those kind of things. There's a couple of day courses that I send some of my team on. If we're talking agile development, then I need my team to be up to speed on scrums and development and stand-ups, all those kind of things. So we may do a couple of days of agile development knowledge, those kind of things. So there's a lot of just level setting when my product managers first start with me. I'm just getting up to speed on exactly what and how we operate. And then what I like to do is just throw them straight into the product. I'll drag them often onto requirements gathering calls that I'm running, sprint reviews for the product. We'll kind of go hand in hand into some of those things. But immediately I'm putting them in front of the stakeholders so that they're across exactly what the product does. One of the biggest eye-opening moments for me and for all of my product managers is watching somebody use one of our products, literally standing behind them while they're using our product. And I can't tell you how many times I've had aha moments where I'm watching somebody use the product and I go, oh my goodness, I've never thought that somebody would use it that particular way. And we've changed product direction purely because I've watched somebody use our product. So we would spend a lot of time initially with new product managers, just sitting them with users of our product, so that they understand how they use it, and the little intricacies and the way that our users are using our product. So that's probably the first few things, the first few weeks, 6 weeks of a product manager in my team. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I just have one more question, and it's actually along the lines of what you were talking about users and building relationships with customers. How would you start the process of reaching out to your customers and kind of building those relationships with them?
Yeah, it's a great question. The main way we do that, and it often starts with a customer logging a support call. Often it's good or bad. They've either had a problem with our product, or they've suggested an improvement to our product, and that's your perfect avenue for you to then go back to that person and say, hey, I would love to work with you on, one, either solving that problem, or two, addressing the improvements that you've suggested. And then you've almost got an open forum to go back to that person or that customer, that user of your product, and have a dialogue with them. And depending on how receptive they are and how much time they have, some of those initial conversations have developed into now those people become part of our UAT testing program. They're on we would have often do lunches where we do product requirement sessions for some customers. We bring them in there and we'd say, okay, let's discuss a particular thing we're about to launch. We'll preview different things to that team so that they're aware of upcoming releases and get the feedback from them. So that's a super important way to really get to know your customers and your stakeholders. And it all started because they logged a support call. So that would be one recommendation, at least, that I would say. Yeah.
Okay, I did just get one more question that I think is good, and then after this, we'll go ahead and close it out. Thank you so much for answering in such detail. So last question is, when do you have both a PM and PO role, product manager and product owner role, for one and the same product, and what was your experience with that?
Yeah, so just how it kind of works with us, we have a product manager for almost every product we have, but we don't have a product owner for all of those roles. Product owners are probably shared amongst our product managers. The product owner, and just the way it works inside my team, is our development team is offshore. So time zone wise, it's often hard to have, it's impossible to have a full day with them. But I get at least 3 or 4 hours every morning with my development team. My product owners sit with my development team. So they're taking business requirements from me and we're writing up product requirements documents. In fact, that's the job normally of my product owner, is to write up those PRDs. Once they've written a PRD, then they're super familiar with the product, the feature or the function that I'm trying to build inside those products. So they can then work with the development team much more closely on running those sprints, coming up with additional requirements, any questions that developers have. Often they get filtered through the product owner first before they then come back to the product managers. So while it sounds like they're treading on each other's toes, they're not really. They're really supporting each other, where the product manager is a little bit more in control of the strategic direction of the product, and the product owner is responsible for a little bit more of the development of the product. Working a lot more closely with the development team and the agile, the sprints, those kind of things is really where the product owner. And as I said, a lot of smaller organizations don't have that role, and often they combine the two roles together. But if you've got a big enough product and a big enough budget, it's super helpful to have a product owner working on your product as well. So, yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much. Very insightful. So that's all the time we have for questions today, but thank you again so much, Mark, for presenting with us. And thank you so much everyone who joined us here on this live webinar. So before we leave, remember that we offer weekly online and on-site events in more than 100 cities. You can also check us out on social media at Product School across all platforms. And be sure to keep up with the latest content on our blog, which will be at productschool.com/blog. So again, thank you so much for joining us, Mark, and everyone online. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll see you next week for next week's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.